All right, today we're going to dig into something really interesting. The official game plan for how one Canadian city is getting ready for a radically different future. We're breaking down Vernon's climate action plan, which is basically their blueprint for going from a place of risk to one of real resilience. So here it is, Vernon, British Columbia. And if you've never been, it's just a beautiful community, right? It's nestled in the Okanagan Valley, famous for its lakes, its rolling hills, and a really vibrant economy. The point is, this is a community with a ton to protect, but it's facing a massive challenge. Its climate is changing, and it's changing fast. Okay, so the very first thing this plan makes crystal clear is that this is not some distant, in-the-future kind of problem. Nope. For Vernon, the climate wake-up call, well, it's ringing right now. And the city isn't beating around the bush here. It states it plainly. Things like floods, wildfires, and landslides, events that used to be considered rare, they're becoming common. That's the new reality on the ground. And that new reality, well, it's got a price tag. Just look at this. Between 2017 and 2019 alone, the direct cost to the city from these kinds of events was over $775,000. And that's not just some abstract number. We're talking about real costs, like emergency work on creeks and providing services for people evacuated from wildfires. It's a tangible financial hit. But the impact goes way beyond just the city's budget. Take this number, 33%. That's the drop in attendance they saw at the local visitor center whenever there was heavy wildfire smoke in the air. That's a direct hit to the local tourism economy, which, as you can imagine, is absolutely vital for the whole region. All right, so if that's what's happening right now, what does the future hold? To answer that, the city's plan looks straight at the science. And this is really the core question, isn't it? The one city planners had to start with. What is the climate actually going to look and feel like in the next few decades? Because the answer to that one question shapes literally every single decision that comes after. Okay, I know this graph looks a little complicated, but stick with me. The only thing you really need to focus on is that red line going way up. That represents what's called a business as usual scenario. Basically, a future where we don't really get a handle on global emissions. Now, planners use this worst-case scenario not to scare everybody, but to make sure the city is prepared for the most extreme possibilities. The thinking is, hey, if you're ready for this, you're ready for anything less severe. So what does that worst-case scenario actually mean for people living in Vernon? Well, it means hotter, drier summers. We're talking about the hottest days jumping by a whole 4.5 degrees Celsius by the 2050s. And get this, nearly double the number of days over 30 degrees. At the same time, it means warmer but also wetter winters. The overall trend is just, well, it's clear, more extreme events all around. Okay, so you've got these big, sweeping projections. What's the next logical step? Well, for the city, it was to figure out what all this means for specific neighborhoods. Where exactly are the most vulnerable spots? And this is how they did it. I find this hazard map just fascinating because it takes those abstract risks and makes them incredibly real. You can literally see the areas at high risk for flooding, like right around Polson Park, and the zones where wildfires could be a major problem, like near Mission Hill. All of a sudden, the threat isn't just some number on a chart anymore. It's a specific street, it's a park you might take your kids to, it's a school. All right, so let's recap. We've defined the problem, we've looked at the hard data, and we've even mapped out the specific risks. So now for the most important part, right? The solution. Let's dive into Vernon's 8-point action plan. So the city's response is honestly incredibly comprehensive. It's organized into these 8 key areas, and you can really see the logic here. First, they're focusing on securing the absolute foundations of the community, right? Things like protecting the water supply, shoring up infrastructure like roads and sewers, and preserving the natural green spaces that make the region what it is. Then, the focus shifts to protecting people and the economy, making sure the community is healthy, improving emergency response, supporting local farms for food security, and really future-proofing their tourism and local economy. And finally, and this is key, they're baking this climate-first mindset into how the city itself operates day to day. It is truly a complete strategy for community-wide resilience. Okay, but let's look at a couple of specific actions to see how this all works in the real world. One key part of the plan is to develop a heat response strategy. This includes creating designated clean air spaces for people to go to during those heavy smoke events. This is just a direct, practical action aimed at protecting the most vulnerable people in the community. And here's another great example.
creating an urban forest management plan. Now, this isn't just about planting trees because they look nice, right? It's a really strategic move to increase the tree canopy for shade and natural cooling. It's a direct way to fight back against those hotter summers we were just talking about. Just a simple, visible, and super effective solution.
Now, a plan this big is obviously going to require some investment, but the final part of the city's plan, and this is so important, is how it reframes that cost. It argues that this isn't just an expense, it's an investment, and one with a potentially massive return. So the plan really frames this as a very clear choice. On one hand, you have the cost of doing nothing, which leads to spiraling damages and totally strained public services. But on the other hand, you have the path of proactive action, which leads to huge savings and a much more secure, livable community. I mean, when you lay it out like that, the choice seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? And if you want the financial case boiled down to a single number, here it is. Studies have shown that for every single dollar you invest in proactive climate adaptation like this, a community can save $6 in future damages. That's a 6-to-1 return on investment. It's an investment in a safer future that literally pays for itself many times over. And that really brings us to the final crucial point here. The city of Vernon has done the hard work. They've done the research. They've laid out the blueprint. The plan is there. So the question for its residents and its leaders is no longer if they can adapt, it's how the entire community will rise to meet this challenge together.